Imagine stepping onto a football field and generating over 4 entire lengths of the field in offense.
Just by yourself.
Right, exactly. Just by yourself in a single afternoon. You aren't just, beating the defense. You're mathematically bankrupting them.
Warping the geometry of the whole stadium, right?
Yeah. And no, this isn't some mythological campfire story. This is the documented 198 season reality of the Nebraska State Prairie Dogs.
It's just wild to even say out loud, 198 seasons.
It is. So whether you are prepping for a deep dive sports trivia night or you're just, insanely curious about the raw, unfiltered evolution of a football dynasty, you are in the exact right place.
Absolutely.
Because today we are cracking open an archive that completely breaks the conventional understanding of sports history. We got our hands on the Nebraska State Prairie Dogs' personal best individual player records.
And, we need to immediately clarify the scale of what we're actually analyzing here for you guys.
Right, the scale is everything.
Yeah, because when we say 198 seasons, we aren't talking about a franchise that's existed since, the 1820s.
That would be something.
Right. No, we're looking at a massive, sprawling simulation. It's a digital dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
This is 198 seasons of virtual college football, so it spans multiple generations of game engines, shifting algorithms, and evolving offensive and defensive metas.
Yeah, maintaining a record book across nearly 200 simulated years is, it's basically an archaeological endeavor at this point.
It really is.
That simulation context is everything. Because if you just look at a spreadsheet of these numbers without understanding the environment they were generated in, your brain just rejects them.
Oh, totally.
Like you look at a quarterback throwing 69 touchdowns in a single year, or a defensive end getting 13 sacks in one game, and you think
it's a typo.
Right, that's a typo. But when you view this as an arms race between offensive and defensive philosophies within a highly fluid physics engine, it becomes a masterclass in exploiting strategy.
Yes. But before we can really unpack the legendary figures who broke the math of this game, we have to understand the specific language used to document this history.
The code.
Exactly, the code. The archivists of this dynasty left us a highly specific, color-coded metadata system. Honestly, it looks like a software developer's version control log.
Okay, so let's unpack this notation system, because looking at this list, there are parentheses, asterisks, and 4 different color codes.
Let's start with the easy part.
Right. The parentheses are straightforward. They just indicate the season or the span of seasons where the record took place. So like an 11 in parentheses just means season 11.
Mm-hmm.
And an S1 89-191 means that players' careers spanned those specific 3 years.
Right. But the color coding is where we see the messy reality of data preservation. Let's start with the red stats. So, any statistic written in red denotes a record that is unable to be verified.
Which immediately begs the question, right? Like, how does a stat become unverified in a computer simulation?
It's a great question.
Because we usually think of digital data as permanent. But over nearly 200 seasons, you're dealing with, corrupted save files, migrating data from older console generations to newer ones.
Oh, for sure. Or even the fact that in the early seasons, like Season 5 or Season 10, the game's internal record keeping might have been so limited that players had to track these numbers manually on a notepad.
Yes. If that notepad gets lost or, a screenshot degrades, you have a red stat, it's a ghost.
It's a ghost, yeah.
Yeah.
And that is a highly plausible theory for the data corruption, which leads directly into the purple stats.
Right, the purple ones.
Yeah, purple stats denote records that need to be re-verified.
So what does that mean exactly?
Well, a purple stat indicates a conflict in the database. Like, perhaps the career total doesn't match the sum of the individual season totals.
Oh, I see.
It tells us that someone, maybe a community of archivists following this dynasty, found a mathematical discrepancy and flagged it for review. So it highlights that even in a simulated environment, human error in data entry still exists.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
But the notation that absolutely fascinates me, the one that proves this isn't just a static list of numbers, are the green stats.
The green stats are crucial.
The archive defines green stats as records that are no longer tracked due to game differences.
Yeah, the green stats represent a fundamental paradigm shift in the physics of the universe these players inhabited.
It's like looking at the patch notes of a massive software update. A green stat is evidence of a world that has completely changed.
Exactly.
You can't compare a green stat to a modern stat because the very mechanics of the game engine, the rules of the NCAA universe they were playing in, they literally shifted. Maybe the way blocking was calculated changed. Maybe a specific defensive formation was patched out because it was just too dominant. The green stats are basically the fossils of an extinct meta.
I take that a step further, actually. It isn't just that the physics engine changed. It's that the developers fundamentally altered what they valued as a metric of success.
Oh, it's interesting.
Right. If a stat becomes obsolete, it means the entire strategic framework of the game moved past it. But as we look at the timeline, the most consequential notation in this entire archive isn't a color at all.
It's a symbol.
The asterisk.
The asterisk.
Yeah, the asterisk denotes the playoff era, which began in Season 185 and runs through the current day of this archive, which is Season 198.
Okay.
Whenever you see an asterisk next to a player's name, it means their records were achieved under a completely different scheduling paradigm.
And this is where the math gets incredibly distorted.
Let's go to start it.
Because think about it. If a team in Season 50 makes the national championship, they are playing maybe 13 or 14 games. Tops, right. But in the playoff era, with a sprawling 12-team or 16-team bracket, a championship team could be playing 16 or 17 games in a single season.
Exactly.
Over a 4-year career, an asterisk player is essentially playing an entire extra season of football compared to a player from Season 50.
Which creates a massive volume multiplier. I mean, it doesn't invalidate the record set in the playoff era, but it definitely demands that we apply a different mathematical lens when evaluating them.
You have to.
You cannot compare a career yardage total from Season 190 directly against one from Season 30. The Season 190 player just had significantly more opportunities, more offensive snaps, a longer runway to accumulate those numbers.
Right. So with that version control system established, we can actually start tracking the evolution of the Prairie Dogs' offensive philosophy.
Let's do it.
And to understand how this game evolved, we can't start with the quarterbacks throwing for 6,000 yards.
No, we definitely can't.
Because quarterbacks don't throw 69 touchdowns in a vacuum.
Yeah.
They only get those massive, wide-open passing lanes because opposing defenses are absolutely terrified of the ground game.
Spot on.
The foundation of this 198-season dynasty was built in the trenches.
The ground game is the great equalizer.
Yeah.
And if we're looking at the evolution of the backfield, the historical data clusters around a very specific, now extinct archetype.
The dominant fullback.
Yes.
We have to talk about Arrington and Rice. Because when you look at modern football, or, the late-stage seasons of this simulation, the fullback is basically a myth.
They don't exist.
They really don't. Offenses use spread formations, 4 receivers, tight ends lined up in the slot. But look at the early data. Arrington played from Season 8 to Season 10. Rice played from Season 16 to Season 19. These guys weren't just lead blockers. They were the focal point of the entire offense.
Consider Arrington's numbers in Season 9 alone. He had 12 rushing attempts in a single game.
12.
Right. For a modern fullback, getting 1 carry a month is an anomaly. Getting 12 carries in a game means the entire offensive game plan revolved around heavy, condensed formations.
Ekvin formation Maryland the first.
Maybe even the wishbone. The simulation's meta in the single-digit seasons clearly favored sheer mass over lateral speed.
And Arrington wasn't just, plunging into the line for 2 yards and falling over. In Season 17 against BYU, Arrington ripped off a 78-yard run.
A 78-yard run by a fullback.
I want to try and visualize what that even looks like in an early game engine.
Right, chunky graphics and all.
Yeah. It means the defensive AI completely lost its gap integrity. Arrington broke the line of scrimmage, and then the secondary simply lacked the pursuit angles to catch a 250-pound battering ram in the open field.
Which implies a massive limitation in the defensive speed ratings of that specific era. If a fullback is outrunning cornerbacks for 78 yards, the speed delta between positions just hadn't been fully balanced yet.
They hadn't patched it.
Exactly. And Rose's career completely validates this early season heavy meta. He had 1,473 career fullback rushing yards and 25 fullback rushing touchdowns between seasons 16 and 19. They were utilizing the fullback as a primary red zone weapon.
But, meta shift. Defenses adapt. If the opposing AI starts crowding the box to stop the fullback dive, the offense has to evolve to find a new mechanical advantage.
Right.
And that brings us to the most unbreakable record in this entire archive.
Oh, Todd. Seasons 51 through 54.
Todd holds the career rushing record with 9,112 yards over 4 seasons.
It's just staggering.
Let's run the math on that for you guys. That is an average of 2,278 yards every single year for 4 consecutive years.
Yep.
And he did this entirely pre-playoff era, no asterisk, no 17-game schedules to pad the stats.
To achieve over 9,000 rushing yards without the playoff era multiplier, Todd had to be the beneficiary of an offensive line that consistently dominated the point of attack.
Right.
Combined with a stamina rating that practically broke the game's fatigue logic. I mean, look at his season 54 campaign. 2,816 rushing yards in a single year.
And in that same season 54, he drops the hammer on Baylor. 413 rushing yards in one game.
Yeah, analyzing a 413-yard rushing game requires us to look at the play calling loop.
What do you mean by that?
Well, passing yards happen in explosive chunks. You can hit 2 deep posts and have 140 yards on just 2 plays.
Right.
But rushing for 413 yards, that means the offense is systematically dismantling the defensive front over 50, maybe 60 separate collisions.
Wait, I mean, the sheer repetition is what really gets me. If Todd is averaging, let's be generous here, 10 yards a carry in that Baylor game, he is still touching the ball over 40 times.
Right.
The physical degradation built into the simulation should have benched him with an injury, or his stamina bar should have been completely depleted by the third quarter.
You would think so.
The fact that he sustained that output means the Prairie Dogs found a rushing concept, maybe an outside zone or a trap play, that the Baylor defensive AI simply could not recognize or adjust to.
That is the hallmark of a dominant season 50s meta. They likely found a blocking animation that consistently gave Todd a clean release into the second level of the defense. But Todd's dominance was about explosive efficiency. If we want to look at a pure grinding workload, the archive points us to Alford in season 136.
Alford is the definition of a digital workhorse.
Absolutely.
In season 136, he logged 376 rush attempts.
My goodness.
For 2,738 yards.
Yeah.
376 times the ball was snapped, and he took the punishment.
The leap from season 54 to season 136 is significant, too. Defenses in season 136 were undoubtedly faster and more complex than what Todd faced.
Definitely.
So for Alford to maintain a yards per carry average high enough to reach over 2,700 yards on that many attempts, it means he wasn't relying on broken defensive pursuit angles like Arrington did.
Right. He wasn't just running past people.
No, he was actively breaking tackles. This suggests the user controlling the Prairie Dogs, or, the offensive philosophy of the simulation at that time, heavily prioritized a ball control time of possession strategy.
But here is the fascinating counter-reaction to that strategy. If you have an offense that runs the ball 376 times a season, opposing defenses are eventually going to sell out completely to stop the run.
They have to.
They're going to play cover zero. They're going to bring the safeties into the box. And the moment that happens, the entire middle of the field opens up. The arms race dictates that the passing game must evolve.
Which brings us to the quarterbacks. And the archive highlights 3 distinct paradigms here: passing efficiency, anomaly, and sheer volume.
I want to start with the anomaly because it perfectly illustrates how a simulation can temporarily break under the right conditions. Let's look at White in season 23.
Oh, White's season 23 performance against USC is just a masterclass in exploiting a flaw in the defensive logic.
White threw 9 passing touchdowns in a single game against USC. 9. He finished season 23 with 47 passing touchdowns total. But those 9 against USC, how does a defense allow that without adjusting?
Well, a 9-touchdown game suggests a complete failure in the USC secondary's pattern recognition.
Okay, break that down.
In a simulated environment, defensive backs operate on logic trees. If the offense runs a specific combination of routes, say a smash concept with a corner route and a short hitch, the defensive zone is supposed to pass those receivers off to different defenders.
Right, that's basic football.
But if White threw 9 touchdowns, it means the Prairie Dogs found a specific route concept that trapped the USC safeties in a conflicting logic loop.
Oh, wow.
The safeties couldn't decide who to cover, leaving receivers running completely unguarded in the end zone.
It's the equivalent of finding an unblockable move in a fighting game and just spamming it until the opponent quits, basically, yeah. The Prairie Dogs realized USC couldn't defend the pass, and they just twisted the knife for 60 minutes. But White was a single-season shooting star. If we want to look at sustained, terrifying efficiency, we have to scroll way back to the very beginning of the passing evolution.
Shivers, seasons 9 through 12.
I am incredibly defensive of Shivers' legacy because it is so easy to look at the massive numbers at the bottom of the archive and ignore the early seasons.
Very true.
But Shivers was a surgeon. In season 11, against UNLV, Shivers achieved a perfect 361.0 passer rating.
We really need to dissect the math of the NCAA passer rating formula to truly appreciate what a 361.0 means.
Yeah, please do.
The formula heavily weights yards per attempt, completion percentage, and touchdowns per attempt, while punishing interceptions drastically.
So to hit a perfect rating, you essentially have to play a flawless game of football. Shivers went 16 for 16 passing, 0 incompletions.
9.
He threw for 301 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Let's contextualize that efficiency for a second. He threw 5 touchdowns on only 16 attempts.
That's crazy.
That means nearly 30% of the time Shivers released the football, it resulted in a touchdown. He was averaging almost 19 yards per attempt.
Wow.
This wasn't a dink-and-dunk offense throwing screen passes. A 19-yard average means he was aggressively pushing the ball down the field vertically and doing it with 100% accuracy. UNLV's defense couldn't force a single throwaway, drop, or batted pass.
And he did that in season 11. Long before the spread offenses of the modern era, he finished his career with 144 total touchdowns between season 9 and season 12.
Incredible.
Shivers defeats you with absolute precision, like a scalpel. But if Shivers is the scalpel, the archive shows us that eventually the Prairie Dogs decided to stop using scalpels and just started using a sledgehammer.
Which introduces us to Hepner, the undisputed king of the season 190 playoff era.
Hepner's stats are where the simulation completely jumps the shark. Season 189 to season 191, all with the playoff era asterisk.
Naturally.
Hepner finishes with 13,330 career passing yards over basically 3 seasons.
The leap in offensive production is just staggering at that point.
Look at his season 190 campaign. Hepner threw for 6,169 yards in a single year and 69 passing touchdowns.
To understand the season 190 Hepner phenomenon, we have to apply both the playoff era multiplier and the evolution of the spread offense.
Right.
Even if Hepner played a maximum 16 or 17 game season, throwing for over 6,100 yards requires averaging roughly 380 to 400 passing yards every single week.
That's exhausting to even think about.
It means the Prairie Dogs had completely abandoned the heavy run formations of the Todd and Alford eras. They were likely operating out of 4 wide or 5 wide empty backfield sets on almost every single down.
I was looking at that 69 touchdown number. If he's playing 15 games, that's 4.6 passing touchdowns a game.
Ridiculous.
It suggests a profound philosophical shift in how the team operated in the red zone. Historically, teams run the ball inside the 20-yard line because the field shrinks and passing windows tighten. But if Hepner is throwing 69 touchdowns, it means the offensive coordinator trusted his arm and the receiver's route running more than they trusted the offensive line to push the pile.
It also speaks to a hyper-accelerated game pace. To accumulate over 6,000 yards, the offense has to maximize the number of possessions in a game.
So they weren't burning the clock.
Oh, not at all. They were likely running a no-huddle, up-tempo system, preventing the defense from substituting and, exploiting their fatigue.
But a quarterback can't rack up over 6,000 yards throwing the ball to himself. The season 190 passing explosion wasn't a solo act.
Obviously not.
The arms race created a need for elite pass catchers, and the archive provides the perfect counterpart to Hepner's volume.
We have to analyze the wide receivers, starting with Haskins.
Haskins in season 190 is the other half of the most devastating quarterback-receiver stack in this entire 198-season history.
They were unstoppable.
If Hepner was the volume king, Haskins was his primary weapon of mass destruction. In one game against Oregon, Haskins had 15 receptions for 392 yards and 5 touchdowns.
A single receiver generating nearly 400 yards against a defense like Oregon implies a schematic mismatch that the defensive AI was just incapable of solving. 15 receptions means Haskins was targeted relentlessly on third downs, in the red zone, and on deep vertical shots.
And his season totals totally validate that reliance. In season 190, Haskins caught 125 passes for 2,573 yards and 35 touchdowns.
Let's cross-reference those numbers with Hepner's real quick.
Okay, let's do it.
Hepner threw 69 touchdowns in season 190. Haskins caught 35 of them. That means over 50% of the scoring production of a record-breaking quarterback flowed through a single receiver. The defense absolutely knew where the ball was going.
They had to.
Opposing coordinators must have double-teamed Haskins, bracketed him with a safety, or tried to jam him at the line of scrimmage. And it didn't matter. The season 190 engine heavily favored the offensive pass catch algorithms over the defensive coverage logic.
But, as dominant as Haskins was in season 190, his single-game record actually doesn't sit at the top of the mountain.
No, it doesn't.
If we scroll back to season 61, we find a performance that defies the geometric constraints of a football field.
Robertson. Season 61 against Florida State.
Robertson caught 423 receiving yards in a single game.
We need to visualize the mechanics of a 423-yard receiving game.
Please.
A football field is 100 yards long. Robertson generated over 4 entire lengths of the field by himself.
I ran the numbers on this. Even if Robertson was catching nothing but 50-yard bombs, he would still need to catch 8 or 9 of them in one game to hit 423 yards.
Right.
That means Florida State's cornerbacks were getting beaten deep on almost every single possession.
A performance like that indicates a fatal flaw in Florida State's press coverage mechanics. In season 61, the game engine might have lacked the nuanced safety help logic we see in later seasons.
Oh, that makes sense.
If Florida State was locked into a defensive playbook that aggressively pressed the receivers at the line of scrimmage, and Robertson possessed an elite release or acceleration rating, he was simply sprinting past the cornerbacks instantly.
Leaving them in the dust.
Exactly. Once he had a step, the quarterback just had to throw it far enough. It was a track meet.
And we also see Nicholson, right? Over in season 95.
Yes. Nicholson.
Nicholson grabbed 5 receiving touchdowns in a single game against Baylor. And he finished his career between season 92 and 95 with 6,569 receiving yards and 57 touchdowns.
Which is just sustained quiet dominance over a 4-year span.
It's the ultimate green stat scenario we talked about earlier, even if it's not marked green. The physics of the earlier games allowed for anomalies that are virtually impossible to replicate against a modern Season 190 zone defense.
Oh, sadly.
But while wide receivers like Robertson and Haskins were busy stretching the field horizontally and vertically, the archive reveals a fascinating mutation happening in the middle of the field.
The evolution of the tight end.
This is perhaps the clearest narrative of positional evolution in the entire database. Let's look at the early days. Jobs, season 10 to season 13. Jobs has a 95-yard touchdown reception against UNLV in season 10.
A 95-yard touchdown from a tight end in season 10 is an incredible data point.
Why is that?
It tells us that the early meta utilized the tight end not just as an extra blocker on the offensive line, but as a vertical mismatch.
Well, think about the linebackers in season 10. They were likely programmed to be run stoppers first. Heavy, slow, designed to stop fullbacks like Arrington.
Exactly.
So when a tight end like Jobs runs right past them on a seam route, the linebackers literally lack the speed ratings to turn and run with him. Jobs exploited the gap between the heavy run-stopping linebackers and the deep safeties. He finished with 33 career touchdowns just by living in that space.
But as the seasons progressed, the linebackers got faster, defenses adapted to the vertical tight end, which forced the position to mutate again.
Yep.
If we fast forward to the playoff era asterisk, we see a completely different type of tight end dominance.
We find Cure, who played from season 185 to 188, and Forsett, who played from season 189 to 192.
These guys aren't just running past slow linebackers.
Not at all. They are high-volume reception machines. Cure and Forsett are tied for the career receptions record with 260 catches each.
Tying at 260 career receptions perfectly illustrates the role of the modern tight end in a spread system. They shifted from being vertical surprises to being the foundational safety blanket of the offense.
Look at Cure's single-game masterpiece in Season 188 against UCLA. 18 receptions for 318 yards.
18 catches.
An 18-catch game means the quarterback is reading the defense, seeing the edge rushers coming, and immediately dumping the ball into the flat or the shallow cross to the tight end.
Exactly. The Season 1 85-plus spread playbooks utilize tight ends on option routes. The tight end reads the linebacker's leverage. If the linebacker plays outside, the tight end cuts inside.
It's chess.
It is. And Forsett used this exact logic to catch 85 passes in season 190 alone. He finished his asterisk career with 3,830 yards and 36 touchdowns.
Unbelievable.
In the modern era, the offense doesn't just feature the tight end. The entire chain-moving apparatus relies on their ability to win short yardage matchups consistently.
But, none of this, not Hepner's 6,100 yards, not Haskins' 35 touchdowns, not the intricate option routes of the tight ends, none of it matters if the quarterback is lying on his back.
That's the truth.
Skill positions get their names bolded in the record books, but the foundation of this dynasty was poured in the trenches.
The offensive line determines the ceiling of any football team, virtual or otherwise.
And the archive gives us one specific, beautiful, violent metric to measure trench dominance. We have to talk about Trey Johnson.
Trey Johnson.
Season 98 to 101. Offensive line. Trey Johnson has 155 career pancakes.
A pancake block is the ultimate display of mechanical superiority in a physics engine.
Explain that for us.
It requires the offensive lineman to fire off the ball with such perfect leverage, power, and momentum that the defensive lineman is completely flattened onto his back, like a pancake.
I want to focus on the psychological and mechanical toll of 155 career pancakes.
Okay.
Trey Johnson didn't just block his assignment. He erased them from the simulation. Over his 4 seasons, 155 times, he triggered a pancake animation against defensive tackles who were likely highly rated recruits themselves.
To achieve 155 pancakes over 4 seasons means Trey Johnson was averaging roughly 3 to 4 pancakes a game.
That's a lot of flat defenders.
Right. If we analyze the mechanics of the season 98 rushing attack, this is a massive tactical advantage. When a defensive lineman is pancaked, he doesn't just lose the block.
What else happens?
He creates a physical obstacle on the ground that linebackers have to navigate around, essentially creating a double impact on the defensive pursuit.
Oh, that's brilliant.
The running backs operating behind Trey Johnson must have had massive, unclosable holes to run through.
It's the definition of setting the tone. But while the offensive line dictates the line of scrimmage, there is an entirely different phase of the game that dictates where that line of scrimmage actually starts.
Special teams.
Special teams yardage is the hidden tax on a football game.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it. Field position is the currency of a simulation.
It truly is. If you have a terrible return game, you are starting every drive on your own 20-yard line. You have to travel 80 yards just to score. That is a massive tax on your offensive play caller. But if you have a legendary return specialist, they are essentially bankrupting opposing defenses before the Prairie Dogs offense even takes the field. And this archive features 2 absolute market crashers, Muhammad and Rude.
Muhammad and Rude tied for the all-time record with 12 career special teams touchdowns each.
12 times in their careers, they caught a punt or a kickoff and just housed it. Let's look at Muhammad first. Season 1, 59 to 162.
Okay.
He had a 108-yard kickoff return against Notre Dame in Season 159.
A 108-yard return provides fascinating insight into the risk-reward algorithms of the game. Muhammad fielded the ball 8 yards deep in his own end zone.
Which is usually a touchback.
Exactly. The standard coaching logic, and likely the default AI behavior, is to take a knee for a touchback and guarantee the 25-yard line.
But Muhammad, or whoever was controlling him, chose chaos.
Pure chaos.
Taking the ball out from 8 yards deep means you have to evade the initial wave of coverage before you even reach the 15-yard line. It requires elite acceleration and agility ratings to navigate the blocking wedges.
And in Season 160, Muhammad generated 802 punt return yards, finishing his career with 2,029 punt return yards. Rude, who was playing earlier in seasons 99 to 102, had 162 career punt returns.
So the strategy is the same across eras.
Yep. The strategic impact of a dominant returner alters the opposing team's punting mechanics. Bunter AI will often be programmed to kick away from dangerous returners, attempting directional punts aimed at the sidelines.
Oh, I see.
This directly leads to shorter, shanked punts, automatically granting the Prairie Dogs excellent field position, even when Muhammad or Rude didn't touch the ball.
The threat of the weapon is almost as powerful as the weapon itself.
Exactly.
And speaking of weapons on special teams, we have to shout out the absolute artillery cannons attached to the legs of the kickers, Kelly and Browning.
The field goal kickers represent a unique mathematical constant in this data set.
Both men hold the record for the longest field goal in Prairie Dog history at 63 yards. Kelly hit his 63-yarder against Neb Omaha all the way back in season 13.
13.
Yeah, and Browning hit his 63-yarder against Illinois in season 152.
139 seasons apart.
139 seasons of virtual time. Think about the massive structural changes to the game engine between season 13 and season 152.
Formations evolved, the spread offense was born.
Blocking mechanics changed, defensive speeds scaled up, but the raw, hard-coded limitation of human leg strength in the simulation remained exactly the same. 63 yards is the absolute threshold of the game's kicking algorithm.
It perfectly illustrates the concept of a developer's hard cap. No matter how much you upgrade a kicker's power rating, the physics engine will simply not allow the ball to travel further than 63 yards through the uprights.
It just stops.
It just stops. And strategically, a 63-yard field goal fundamentally alters a defensive coordinator's math. A 63-yarder is kicked from the defense's 46-yard line.
Wait, think about that.
Right. That means the Prairie Dogs cross midfield, run one play, and are instantly in scoring range. The defense gets a stop on third down, they think they've won the series, and then 3 points go on the board anyway.
It's so demoralizing. But if special teams flip the field and steal points, it is the defense's job to hold the line when the offense turns the ball over.
Yes.
And the Prairie Dogs didn't just hold the line. They produced some of the most terrifying, game-breaking defensive superstars to ever stalk a backfield.
For the Wrecking Crew, the counter-evolution to the high-powered offenses.
If the offense is trying to evolve to score faster, the defense must evolve to destroy the quarterback. And we have to start with the ultimate ball hawk, Sherman.
Sherman. Season 59 to season 62.
Sherman had 37 career interceptions. 37 times he completely erased an opponent's drive. In season 60 alone, he picked off 12 passes.
Ridiculous.
But the crown jewel, the absolute S-tier defensive stat of this entire archive, happens in season 61 against Iowa State. Sherman had 6 interceptions in one game.
6 interceptions by a single player in a single game is a statistical anomaly that requires a deep dive into the opponent's AI behavior.
Right, because how does the opposing quarterback even have the confidence to throw the 6th pass?
They wouldn't.
If a guy intercepts me twice, I am never looking at his side of the field again.
That is exactly the logic failure we are analyzing here. Usually, a quarterback's awareness rating dictates that they avoid elite cornerbacks.
Makes sense.
So for Sherman to secure 6 interceptions, he wasn't playing tight man-to-man coverage where the receiver was clearly blanketed. He had to be baiting the Iowa State quarterback.
Setting a trap.
Yes. Sherman likely played off the line of scrimmage, making the quarterback's AI read the receiver as open. Once the throwing animation triggered, Sherman's elite speed and acceleration allowed him to close the gap and steal the pass.
Wow.
He was exploiting the quarterback's decision-making algorithm.
He was a predator hunting in the zone. But here is the piece of historical overlap that makes analyzing this archive so incredibly rewarding. We just looked at Sherman's career spanning season 59 to season 62. Now we have to look at the other side of the defensive coin. The pass rush.
The most direct way to disrupt a passing attack.
The single-season sack record belongs to a player named Roberts. He generated 30 sacks in a single season.
30 sacks over a standard schedule is nearly 2 sacks per game every single week.
But the truly terrifying detail is the season he did it. Roberts achieved his 30-sack season in season 59.
Sherman's freshman year.
The season 59 defense.
The synergy of the season 59 defense explains the extreme statistical output of both players. We're looking at a perfectly calibrated defensive ecosystem.
Let's break down that ecosystem. When you have Roberts, a defensive end, who's going to sack the quarterback 30 times that season, bearing down on the edge every single snap.
Right.
What happens to the opposing quarterback's internal clock?
Oh, it accelerates artificially. The quarterback's AI senses the immediate pressure. They can't let the deep crossing routes develop. They can't step up into the pocket.
They panic.
They are forced to initiate their throwing animation early, often off their back foot under extreme duress.
And when a quarterback throws a rushed, panicked pass over the middle or into the flat?
Sherman is waiting in the secondary to pick it off. This overlap completely validates Sherman's incredible interception numbers.
It all connects.
Roberts' devastating pass rush directly facilitated Sherman's development as an elite ball hawk. Opposing offenses in season 59 were presented with an impossible binary choice. Hold the ball and get physically crushed by Roberts, or throw it away and get mentally broken by Sherman.
The pass rush and the secondary functioned as an anvil and a hammer.
Ah.
I would pay so much money to watch a simulation replay of that season 59 defense.
Oh, me too.
But, as dominant as a 30-sack season is, there is a single-game defensive record from much earlier in the archive that might be the most absurd, game-breaking stat on this entire list.
We have to examine
Hawkins. Season 22 and 23. But let's start with his tackling volume.
Okay.
In season 22 against Idaho, Hawkins recorded 19 tackles in a single game. He finished season 23 with 113 total tackles. He was a heat-seeking missile tracking the ball carrier. But the record that completely stops my heart. Season 22 against Louisville, Hawkins had 13 sacks in one game.
13 sacks by a single defender in a single game indicates a total systemic collapse of the Louisville offensive line's logic.
When you see Hawkins getting 13 sacks in one game, you have to ask at what point the opposing coach just abandons the playbook.
Right.
How does the Louisville coordinator allow his quarterback to drop back for the 14th time when the previous 13 resulted in catastrophic collisions?
To contextualize the mechanical failure required for this to happen, in modern football, if an entire defensive unit generates 5 sacks, it is a dominant performance.
Yeah, that's a great day.
For one player to secure 13 sacks, he must be defeating his blocker almost instantaneously.
Wow.
Hawkins was likely utilizing a specific pass rush move, perhaps a swim move or a spin move, that the Louisville offensive tackle simply lacked the agility rating to counter. Hawkins was in the backfield within 1.5 seconds of the snap.
He was basically taking the handoff from the center.
Precisely. And the fact that Louisville continued to call pass plays implies that Hawkins's early dominance put them in a massive point deficit.
Of the catch-up logic.
Yes, the simulation's logic forces teams trailing by multiple scores to abandon the run and pass heavily to catch up. This created a positive feedback loop for Hawkins.
Wow.
Louisville had to pass, the offensive tackle couldn't block him, and Hawkins was free to pin his ears back and attack the quarterback without any fear of a run play holding him honest. It was a statistical bloodbath fueled by the game engine's catch-up logic.
A statistical bloodbath. That is the perfect way to summarize it.
So when we synthesize this entire archive from Season 8 all the way to the playoff era of Season 1, 98, what overarching narrative emerges from all this data?
Well, I think it tells us that we aren't just looking at random numbers on a spreadsheet. We are looking at a living, breathing organism that constantly had to adapt to survive. You can draw a direct evolutionary line through the 198 seasons. You start with the heavy, blunt force trauma of Arrington and Rice in the season 10s.
Right.
That evolves into the surgical, error-free efficiency of Shivers in season 11 as passing became viable. You see the sheer grinding dominance of Todd in season 54, forcing defenses to adapt.
And then the defense responds.
Exactly. You witness the terrifying defensive synergy of Sherman and Roberts in season 59, rising up to crush the passing game.
It's all connected.
And finally, you arrive at the modern era, the playoff era asterisk, where volume explodes, and you have Hepner and Haskins putting up absolute video game numbers in season 190 because the rules, the schedule, and the spread offensive philosophy fundamentally expanded the mathematical limits of the simulation.
It is the complete story of an arms race. Every dominant offensive tactic was eventually countered by a defensive mutation, which forced the offense to innovate again.
Yep.
The rules of the universe changed, but the drive to exploit those rules remained constant.
It takes that murky, unverified landscape we talked about at the beginning and gives it a crystal clear narrative. But I want to leave you, our listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time today talking about the green stats. Those records that are entirely obsolete, the ones that are no longer tracked due to shifting game engines and physics updates from older versions of the NCAA universe.
The extinct mechanic.
Yes, the extinct mechanics.
Yeah.
So think about the modern playoff era record set by Hepner, throwing for over 6,000 yards, or Haskins catching 125 passes in season 190. What radical updates to the simulation, what new AI logic algorithms or physical evolutions in the virtual sport will happen by season 300?
Wow. Yeah.
What changes will the developers make that might render today's season 190 records completely obsolete or untrackable? When the future archivists look back at this exact moment, season 198, what will be their version of a green stat?
It really forces us to question if the current meta is truly the pinnacle or just another stepping stone in the simulation's evolution.
It absolutely does. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the 198-season history of the prairie dogs. Keep questioning the records, keep studying the patch notes, and above all, keep learning.